Liverpool, they have had an incredible window, and it looks like they'll be adding even more. Hugo Ekitike potentially on his way to Anfield. What's the latest on that one?
Yeah, well, this is what you get when you run really sensibly and sustainably and you don't spend any money in the summer of 2024. It means you've got a rather large chequebook and you can attack the window, and that's exactly what Liverpool are doing. They've got these targets, they've gone out and got them nice and early, and yet there could be another 100 million euro player about to hit Anfield. Hugo Ekitike, what's the latest? Well, talks have continued over the course of this weekend between Liverpool and Eintracht Frankfurt. We reported yesterday that the fixed fee part of the deal was agreed. That bit was sorted between the two football clubs. That's 80 million euros, which is around 69 million pounds. That's the guaranteed payment that Liverpool will be making to Eintracht Frankfurt. The conversations then continued with regards to what the add-ons were. Now, we've been reporting throughout the course of this summer that Eintracht Frankfurt wanted 100 million euros for the player. They're not going to get that, but they certainly will be getting close. There were some reports today on social media and from some transfer experts saying the deal was worth around 95 million euros. Our sources haven't confirmed that as of yet, but there is a real confidence between both clubs that they can get the deal finalised and sorted. I know there has been further contact and negotiations throughout the course of today. One of the things that's quite important to point out with Eintracht Frankfurt is that they're really meticulous about the way they do business and the way they do their player sales. And they always stand firm on the valuations that they have on the players. Now, you'll know because you've covered these transfers in the past, and they're always very specific about what they get, and they always want top dollar for their players. And when you look at the list of players that they've actually sold to Europe and to teams in the Premier League, you can see the type of money that they are generating. Obviously, Randall Kolo Muani up the top there for £64.2 million. Omar Mamouche to Manchester City in the January window as well for just over £60 million. Jovic to Real Madrid, Sebastian Haller as well for £45 million to West Ham a few years ago. And obviously, when you look at the potential deal for Hugo Ekitike, it would sit right at the sharp end, right at the top of that list, which gives you an indication as to the type of deal this is, the money that's involved, the type of player they have on their hands, and what Liverpool potentially are getting. We know that the player wants to move. He was keen to join the Premier League, and when the interest of Liverpool was made aware to the player, he was like, absolutely, I want to join the Premier League champions. We know that there was that rejected bid from Newcastle earlier in the week as well, but as soon as Liverpool entered the transfer, for him, he had one eye and one eye only on that football club. So it feels like, with that basis, the personal term's not going to be a problem. It feels like it's only a matter of time now before we get deal agreed. Hugo Ekitike will be heading to Anfield.
You say Hugo Ekitike heading to Anfield. He could have been heading to St James's Park because, of course, Newcastle United had a £70 million bid rejected by Eintracht Frankfurt. And this was, of course, against the backdrop of a certain Alexander Isak. Now, Newcastle United were thrashed 4-0 by Celtic in a pre-season friendly yesterday. Alexander Isak was not in the squad, and in fact, he was left at home. Eddie Howe told everyone and the media exactly why Isak was left at home. Here he is now.
Alex was with us all the way through Austria, but today, with all the speculation and things that are going on, I decided to send him home. The last thing Alex wants if he's not playing is to be sat in the stand, being under that scrutiny. I don't think that's fair to the player. So if he wasn't going to play today, which we mutually agreed that he needs a little bit more training time, then it's best he's not here. Yes, I've had discussions with him, but that's not abnormal. I respect a player's career and how short it is. All the time I will be communicating my desires and my wishes to them and what I see and trying to help them. Alex has been really good and he's trained really well so far this season. So I know there'll be lots of noise around it and I can't really control that, but from inside he's been really good.
Has there been any approach for Alex? Has there been any approach?
No, there's been no formal approach.
I respect a player's career and how short it is. Key words from Eddie Howe there about Alexander Isak. Should Newcastle United fans be worried in any way that this has reared its head again, given Liverpool have kind of pivoted from Alexander Isak to Hugo Ekitike? Could it go back the other way?
I don't think so. I think Liverpool are so far down the track with Hugo Ekitike and Frankfurt that it won't happen. However, the noise, I hate to say, for Newcastle fans won't go away. You get the feeling that we'll be talking about Alexander Isak right the way through to the deadline day on September the 1st. The positive as far as Newcastle fans are concerned is that Liverpool spending the best part of 100 million euros on Hugo Ekitike means that they don't have 100 million euros to spend on someone like Alexander Isak. And as we know, where the Premier League sides are conscious of PSR, we know that teams in La Liga have to be very careful about what they spend as well, particularly Barcelona, so it leaves only Real Madrid. There are very few sides in European football that could afford the type of money that Newcastle want. Now, their stance is quite clear, and Eddie Howe said this after the game yesterday. He's not for sale. We don't want to sell him. And that will be their message to any potential suitor between now and September the 1st. But this is a player that got 32 goal involvements last season in all competitions. He was absolutely sensational. He was one of the best strikers in world football last season. So there is always going to be noise. There is always going to be interest. Now, Newcastle do hold the cards because he has 3 years left on his current Newcastle contract. So therefore, it's not like it's 1 or 2 years left where they have to start thinking about the financial side of any transfer dealing. They still very much hold the cards there. And Eddie Howe has made it quite clear to Alexander Isak, I want you here. I want you to lead my attack. I want you to be a part of this Champions League squad and be a part of this team that I believe can not only better what we did last season by winning the League Cup, winning more silverware, but I believe we can have a huge impact in the Champions League, and you're a key part of it. So any noise, put it to one side if possible. Let's focus on Newcastle.
It does sound like, and I know Newcastle United fans won't want to hear this, but from what Eddie Howe was saying, that maybe Isak's head had been turned by this interest from Liverpool. Now, you mentioned that Newcastle United hold the cards, 3 years left on his contract. If they keep him, which we expect him to, as it stands, come next summer, if they haven't tied him down to another contract and maybe a reasonable release clause so all parties are happy, he'll then have 2 years left on his contract. And Newcastle United might then find themselves in a position where they've got a player in Alexander Isak, who's only got 2 years left on his contract, and one of their number one targets in Hugo Ekitike is now plying his trade at Liverpool. Are they going to find themselves in a position where not only would they have to bring in someone to replace Isak, but another striker as well? Would they have to be in the market for two players in that position?
Very possibly so. We know that they're in the market for a striker this summer. And Eddie Howe's plan was not just to buy Hugo Ekitike as a replacement for Alexander Isak. He had a plan to play them both together, but he also had a succession plan should Newcastle decide to sell Alexander Isak in this window or next summer. So I think that's quite important to point out. I think the situation moving forward is very much, they've lost Callum Wilson. They have Will Asula, who's a younger striker and an exciting prospect and product maybe for the future and a project for the future. So they do need someone who can fill the void if Alexander Isak were to be injured or to not be available, or as they've done in this pre-season, Eddie Howe wanted to share the load amongst the strike force. João Pedro was a player that they were very much interested in, who could play as that false nine, who could play through the middle as well. They weren't able to get that deal over the line. So therefore, they're back at the drawing board looking at their options and targets, because it's absolutely a position they do need to strengthen. The problem for Newcastle is everyone knows that they had £70 million rejected by Eintracht Frankfurt, so they know exactly how much is on the chequebook.